I want to go back to this one thing. I'm still very curious. I don't feel like I've gotten an answer out of you about your harmonic language. So we talk about the rhythm. You know, we know what's going on with the rhythm and melodically, and there's some beautiful passages in your music with, you'll just take a little moment where you'll do this big rhythmic thing, and then it'll stop and you'll do this beautiful string thing. And I'm just really curious what you're referencing harmony-wise. It doesn't have to be anything necessarily like you're not doing, well, I'm doing this mode or that mode or nothing like that, but maybe it's just instinct, because a lot of times it is with me. Like, I've studied all the theory you can imagine, but it's always in the end, it's just my ear.
Can you grab me that guitar?
There's various ways that I go about creating a harmonic map.
Very curious about this.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll hit a chord on the piano. I'll think of what I'm trying to achieve. You know, like, I know that this section, I want it to be really kind of beautiful or whatever. So I'll find a chord, and all I need is one chord, and everything flows out of that. Other chord, everything, you know, because that'll set the tone. So I'll very rarely sit and go, you know, and then go, okay, do da do da do, you know. But usually the harmonic map comes from the intention of the idea. So if something like, there's still something dead in here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wrote that when I was 21, and I was on an airplane when I wrote the first version, which was for like 15 guitars or something.
That's what I was talking about, where it was, I think I have a demo of that you sent me.
Yeah, it's on my first solo record, Flexible.
Got it.
I knew that rhythmically I wanted to experiment with some big polyrhythms, and harmonically I wanted it to be very dissonant.
The orchestral version is really, I mean, it's really beautiful and awesome. I mean, it's really good, man.
Thank you.
It's a very different from the guitar version.
Oh yeah, totally different.
I mean, it's like beamed in from another planet, like.
Yeah, it was taken from that, but I added a lot of parts.
A lot of parts, yeah.
Okay, so like, just that first few melody, it didn't require anything but that melody. Okay, it's weird, it's interesting, and I like it. And I didn't play it, I heard it. And then I said, okay, and then the rest just came. Now, certain things, like I might go do da dee dee da do be. Okay, what are those notes? That was a melody I heard. I write down those notes. I go, what are the chords that work on that?
Right.
You know, so how?
Right. So you're saying that a lot of your harmony is derivative from the melody that you're making.
That's one approach.
Yep.
Another approach is to find a chord that has an atmosphere and a color to it, and then complement it with melodies. There's one section at the end of the Still Small Voice where all of the various melodies in the piece come together and they play.
I know the section.
Hard.
I know the section.
Because I had to have the one note work through the whole thing too, the F, you know.
Right.
So a harmonic structure like that was a real challenge, because
that's fugue-esque. You know.
It's fugue-esque. Yeah, it comes out very fugue-esque.
Right.
But I wasn't quite sure that that's what I was going to do before I did it.
Yeah, of
you
course,
know, that was one of those ideas that came and said, "Can you take all these, take these sections and bring them together and make it sound musical?" And theoretically, I couldn't. So I actually went back and changed two or three notes in some of the other melodies so that they would work in the fugue-esque.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, I mean,
you have to, because that was like, it was like a Rubik's cube.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it's so much fun.
You hear a lot of diminished seconds. There's a lot of that going on in there, but you don't overuse it. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, it gets noisy.
And then a lot of times you'll resolve on a major chord, every once in a while,
Yeah.
and it's like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, that's
and
like
then
there's
you'll-
something dead in here is like that.
Right.
The very last chord is just like a major 9 chord or
It's
something.
cool, man.
Yeah, but that was a great fun exercise. The harmonic map, in that piece it came from the melodies. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would hear a
Yeah,
melody
that
and then
explains.
create the map. But something like the middle of everywhere, besides the rhythmic complexity of it, that was where I would find chords. And I like very dense chords, you know,
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
like 8, 9
Yep.
note chords.
Me too.
Yeah. And it's challenging to get them to sound good given their dissonance.
Absolutely.
Or else it just sounds like
and horizontally.
Yeah.
You can line something up vertically easy, but when it's going horizontal, I mean,
Yeah.
it becomes way more of a challenge with the voice leading
yeah.
going forward to really keep the musical sounding element engaged.
Yeah.
Because it's, like we were talking, you mentioned earlier that you don't like just noise for noise sake. It's very easy to get lost in all that and just do all this stuff that doesn't have any connection to
Yeah.
it melodically.
Some of what I do compositionally is, I don't like to use the word experimental because it almost sounds like you don't know what you're going to get. And I usually have a good idea,
Yeah.
but sometimes I allow my intellectual mind to construct something.
I think you have to. You have to use your intellect to do a lot of shaping it, the
Yeah.
structure, the form, everything. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the intelligent part of that has to umbrella the whole thing. You have to have that
Yeah, you have
engaged,
to have the background, you know, like
or else it'll just sound like meandering nothingness going off
Meandering
into the
nothingness.
oblivion. You know,
Yeah.
It's
I
not
tell
gonna mean
guitar
anything.
players you don't really need to know theory if you have a good ear. You'll be employing it without knowing it. But if you want to be a composer now, there's no messing around.
Right.
You got to know you got to know the rules.
You can always hear that when a quote rock musician or something tries to write a classical piece and they haven't done their homework. I mean, that's a bit of
Yeah.
a pet peeve of mine, to be honest with you.
Well, what they do is gravitate immediately to what conventional classical music is. So they'll go and listen to,
Right.
you know, Bach or, you know, Mozart,
Right.
and this kind of thing, and which is fine. It's great, and then try to emulate the atmosphere of that,
Right.
and that's fine. A lot of people do that. They do it in rock music. They do, but it doesn't carry the inspiration. It's the pantomiming of somebody else's genius.
Exactly. This has been awesome.
Well, let me ask you some questions.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Kip, I can't tell you how nice it was when I discovered that you were composing,
Thank you.
because there's not many, you know, rock musicians that compose.
Yeah.
So, what compelled you? Like, when did it start? Was it like a secret passion that you just kept secret?
I studied classical guitar when I was 16. I heard Baroque music when I was young and thought, oh, something's going on there that
Yeah.
I don't know about. And it was like doing work on my brain.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, I want to know how to do that. So I studied a few classical guitar pieces. And then when I was 16, I had a girlfriend who wanted to take ballet, and I didn't have any of her friends that would do it. And I said, I'll do it. And I went in and I took to it like a duck to water. And I heard Stravinsky, Tchaikovsky, Debussy, Ravel, you know, and all this music coming off the piano and off the records that they were doing class to. And I was
Yeah.
like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And I just started listening. Because before that, I was like playing. You know, I played in a band with my brothers my whole
Yeah.
life. I was Grand Funk and Led Zeppelin, all the stuff, same as you. But the stuff that was really moving me was the classical music, and I never, in my wildest dreams, imagined that I would ever be able to write an orchestral piece and nevertheless get it played.
Yeah.
And then in New York, when I was 22, I studied a little bit from a guy and wrote a string quintet.
Oh, really? You were that young when you?
I had a good teacher because he knew I was into rock, but I was also really into Debussy and all this kind of thing. And so he went, well, why don't you write a string quintet? And I thought, okay, let's try it. So I wrote this kind of little piece, and I kept studying. He had me do an analysis of Elgar Enigma variations, which is a theme and variation, and it's, in my opinion, the best theme and variation example that you can do. And I don't know if you know Elgar's music very well, but his string writing is unbelievable.
I'll have to check
And
more of
that
it out.
piece is it's like a textbook piece in theme and variation. So that piece is really what set it off in terms of me like studying scores and stuff. But I let it ride for a long time, man. I was too afraid to really go into it because I was mostly a self-taught musician. I studied piano, so I could read piano music and stuff, and I did a little guitar. And then in '96, when my first wife passed away, I thought, okay. And then the grunge thing happened. I was completely out of a job. My first wife passed away, and I thought, okay, what do I really want to do here?
Right.
And so I found a composition theory teacher at the University of New Mexico. I was 35, and I went down and studied with him. And he's like, okay, let's do some species counterpoint.
Species?
Species counterpoint.
What's that?
There's 5 species, and there's like an exercise. You do one line, and then you add another line, and then another line, and it talks about the different motions of counterpoint.
Oh, okay.
It's out of this one book, Counterpoint and Composition, and there was a section on species counterpoint. And it talks about how you write a line, and then, you know, oblique motion or parallel motion and all this kind of thing. That's what I started with. And he would say, get away from your piano. You can't do this with a piano. You have to do all this in your head.
Yeah.
And so I started practicing getting it, getting it down in my head and just writing one little whole notes. It's just a bunch of footballs.
Yeah.
And then by the time you get to 4th and 5th, there's quite a bit more going on. And then he introduced me to post-tonal music, which was, you know, pitch class system where no C is a 0, C sharp's a 1, and so there's 12 pitch classes, and writing melodies with pitch classes where register doesn't matter. And,
right.
And that really freaked me out because that was when I was able to let go of key signatures and all that. And, you know, it all kind of went from there. I did a lot of studying with him, just exercises and farting around with my sequencer, and then studied with a guy at Vanderbilt named Michael Keurig, who I wrote Ghosts with. That was my first piece I wrote with him.
Well, it's interesting that your first piece that you actually penned, it was done so well.
Thank you.
It's beautiful sounding.
I think it was like your first album. You know, you've been working up to it all that time for all those years, and then you write this piece, like Mad Scientist piece.
Yeah.
But I hit a zone. That was not easy. I worked a year before I really even got that first movement into shape.
Yeah.
And then after that, it took me another year and a half to finish that.
Yeah.
You know, I spent a long time on that piece.
Yeah. It's not uncommon to go back and, but you know, when you write something, to edit it and then edit it some more and then edit and then edit and edit. You know.
That's why I was wondering when you know a piece is finished. But when I delivered that to Chris Wheeldon with 3 movements because he wanted me to make it longer, 2 weeks before they went into rehearsal, he's like, I need 4 more minutes. And so I wrote the second movement in 2 weeks, you know. And that was really interesting exercise in deadline.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that drill. They're having to work within a deadline.
And I'm not fast, man. It took me a year and a half to write my second piece, and boy, it will have taken me 2 years to write this violin concerto. But I'm not hitting it hard because I'm touring.
You're doing all sorts of different things. Yeah.
But also,
so what is your compositional process like? How does it from inception? Like, okay, so Kip, I need 4 minutes of music.
First thing, panic.
Okay, part of the process.
Second thing, I can't do this. I'm not up for it. Third thing, okay, maybe I could do this.
And then the little voice comes in and says, shut the fuck up and just do it.
Shut the fuck up and just do it. Yeah. That's happened to me. So Alan Parsons called me one time and said, could you do some orchestral arrangements on this Jake Shimabukuro album? I'm like, absolutely not. And my publisher was like, absolutely yes. You know, it was the same thing.
He's great. I love that kid.
Jake is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, what I found the most interesting with me is as time's gone on that I can't sit at an instrument very long at all. I have to do what you're talking about that you do at night.
Yeah.
I have to sit down for a second. Like if I hear a sound come out of a speaker for very long, it'll take me out of what I want to be in. So I'll get up and walk around and pace the room and just try to listen.
Yeah.
You know, and then sit back down and find out where I think it's going to go. And I can always hear where I want it to go, but manifesting it still, the only thing I've ever manifest that I really heard where I wasn't like chiseling away at the sculpture and finally it comes into form, was the first symphony that I just finished. It was the one piece where I was like, I wanted to do this, and I did it. That was the very first time I ever did that.
That was what, your third piece?
No, that was like maybe my sixth piece, because I had a couple small commissions. I actually wanted to write the first ukulele concerto for Jake, and I got into it, and then somebody else beat me to the punch. This really great Hawaiian composer, I can't remember his name, but they did a really cool piece. And so I converted it to a guitar piece, a classical guitar piece. It was
how nice.
8 minutes, but it's unpublished and unreleased. But so the symphony was about my maybe eighth or ninth piece. Actually, in my first symphony, I came up with this aha idea that the same you're talking about, with no note duration being any different than any other at any given time.
Yeah.
I had this idea to write Morse code, and I didn't realize Rush had done that.
Are there any real new ideas?
Well, in the orchestra world, I don't think it's been done. It's about a person's lost soul sending Morse code messages of atonement.
Oh, yeah.
So I do.
I saw that.
Yeah.
You sent me that score, and
Yeah.
I was looking at it, and you had actually sent Morse code.
Yeah.
I think you sent me some Morse code.
Yeah, the Morse code. There's 4 movements, and like the third movement is metamorphosis.
Yeah, it's nice. There's so many creative tools that we can use, that are like that.
It's hard to find those ideas that'll withstand the test.
The test of being music,
Right.
being real music.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like when I was at Berkeley and I was learning label, break down, and decipher chord progressions into 1-6-2-5 or stuff like that, and it gets pretty, with substitutions and then you start doing things like taking people's phone numbers and making progressions out of them.
Right.
And sure, you can do that, but sometimes it's just like.
I had
It doesn't sound good at all.
Right. It's very susceptible to being gimmicky.
It becomes gimmicky, yeah.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to take something relatively gimmicky and do something with it that sounds organic and natural.
Right.
Yeah.
And inevitable. I know you're really into Varese,
I like Varese, yeah.
and I got you a gift
Oh,
that I want to give to you.
ionization. Oh, Kip, that's amazing. What
I'd
is
like you
it?
to open it up and check it out.
Brother man.
Yeah, man, you've been very, very generous to me, and I really
Oh,
appreciate it.
Not doing anything. What did you do, Kip Wenger?
This is a letter from Varese to the International Composers Guild.
Ah. I have to tell you a great story after I read this. You're going to get a big kick out of
Something
it.
you
But
can hang on the wall of this incredible studio.
well, this isn't the original letter.
It
This
is, yeah.
What do you mean?
It's the original letter.
It's not a Xerox or?
No, it's the letter. That's his signature on the original
Kip,
letter.
what the fuck you giving me this for? This
Because-
is priceless gold. You can't give me
But
this.
it's good for. It's a great thing for you to put on the wall. In
Put
your
on the
studio.
wall. This is
Yeah.
going. This is going in the grave with me, brother.
Okay, good.
This is amazing. How did you get your hands on this? How did you find this?
I collect stuff like that, and I came across that, and I thought this is perfect for Steve because I know you're really into him.
I can't even believe that.
Yeah,
Is this the transcription of it?
it is. Yeah.
Because he had a little bit of a bumpy relationship with them, didn't he?
I don't know. I don't know a lot about Varese because you were so into him. I studied a bunch of his music to see what was there, and there's some very interesting stuff going on.
I can't believe this. Where did you get it?
I'm not telling. No, man.
Kip, I don't think I've ever received anything like this. I'm just really touched. It's amazing. I can't believe this is a
glad you
priceless
like it.
artifact. You're giving it to me.
Of
don't
course
know if
I
that's
am, man.
Wise.
You're a very rare breed, and I feel a kinship to you in that way. You know, we both are in the orchestral world. We're in the electric world, and we have this kind of simpatico in the spiritual world because of this. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to give it to you. So I hope you dig it. Yeah.
Brother, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
This is one of the
Of
most
course.
extraordinary gifts I've ever gotten. I
Cool.
think so. I
Cool.
really think so. So I have to tell you this great story.
Let's hear it.
Elliott Carter, right? Like I say, I'm not a big fan of really atonal, totally out stuff. But some people do it so well. And for
Elliott,
me,
he's
Elliott
amazing.
Carter, just amazing.
Yeah.
I've got all of his compositions, and he was 102, and I went and visited him in New York City at his apartment.
Wow.
It was amazing. He was 102 years old, and I get in there, and he had a guy helping him out. First of all, it was remarkable that he accepted to see me, and he was so kind. And he's been living in this apartment on, I think it was 34th Street. He passed away now. For 65 years, the same apartment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which part of New York?
It's Midtown area, I think. And he lived there with his wife for that whole period, and she had passed away some years earlier. But he had this music room, and it was half the size of this room, and it had a piano in it, and stacks upon stacks upon stacks of paper, right? 102 years old, and he brought me this piece of music that he was composing for bassoon and orchestra.
Wow.
And his assistant was the bassoon player, and he was writing it for this guy. And he showed me, and it's like every stem is like shaky,
Wow.
and the notes were, but it's like and he wakes up, he works from 9 to 12, and then he takes 2-hour break, and then he works basically from 3 to 6 every day, and that's his composition. And I started talking about Edgar Varese, and he goes, "Yeah, Edgar lived right over there." And he points to the house or the apartment that Edgar Varese lived in.
Wow.
He goes, he'd come over every Sunday for dinner. And there was a period of time, from what I understand, I'm really eager to read what this says, because as the story goes, Aaron Copland was the head of the Composers Guild. Now, I might have this all, I think it was the Composers Guild. And at that time, it was, Aaron Copland was Americana.
Yeah.
Nobody understood Varese. They didn't get his music.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't understand it at all. He was one of the few artists that was really ahead of his time. Like Stravinsky was like ahead of everybody else, but Varese was just ahead of his time. He's the most, him and Mahler.
Yeah.
I'm a big Mahler head. If there's any classical music that I really am moved by, it's probably Mahler.
Yeah,
And Ravel. I love Ravel.
Amazing.
So he told me the story about how Aaron Copland was not a big fan of Varese.
Oh,
right?
really?
Or Elliott Carter. He didn't support him and actually foo-fooed him in the guild. And Varese got so incensed about this that he quit composing for like 20 years or something.
Wow.
Yeah, if you ever look at his catalog, there's not a lot there. I mean, what's there, they're discovering now. He's one of those artists where he's the most studied right now. This is what I'm told by some scholars, like Michael Custodes. I'm interested to see what this says, because it... do you mind if I just read it for a second?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, then it wasn't the International Composers Guild that Aaron Copland was heading, because it says that Varese was actually heading that.
Yeah, I think that's a different organization.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of stuff with Copland in regards to that.
Oh, you did? You heard
Yeah,
some of those?
yeah.
But it was interesting, because Carter said to me, he felt the same way about my music, but I didn't care. But Edgar cared, and it stopped him. And then he came back to writing. I don't know what to say, Kip. This is the most extraordinary gift I ever got.
That's awesome.
I can't even believe it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Brother, man, that's amazing.
Well, I appreciate you talking to me, too.
Wow. I appreciate the support.
Steve Vai, ladies and gentlemen.
Kip Winger right there.